Well,
there we go.
Can you imagine this? I mean, this is the way to spend your time.
Hey, it's Evan Carmichael, and like Warren Buffett says,
you want to associate with people that are better than you are. I mean, basically, you'll go in the direction of the people that you associate with.
And that's why I create these videos to help you associate with people doing bigger things than you. Need motivation?
Watch the top 10 of Believe Nation.
Top 10, I got a top 10. Got my motivation high for my top 10. Gotta learn from the wise women and men. All my life, like 9 and 9. For my top 10, top 10, 9 and 9. This one's for my top 10.
What did you aspire to do? Did you aspire to become a very wealthy person? Would you want to be buying stocks? Would you want to buy companies? What was your aspiration in those early days?
I loved just analyzing securities. I just spent hours and hours and hours. I kept turning the pages of Moody's, which instead of going, you had no internet then or anything else, so you had two sources of information, Moody's and Standard & Poor's. And we happened to have these sets of Moody's. They were about, in aggregate, probably about 8,000 pages, about 5 different manuals. And I went through those page by page.
And, well, it must have been exciting.
Yeah, it's a little strange. I mean, I actually went to Amazon a few years ago and I found an old 1951 Moody's. Now, everybody else is going there for Playboy magazine, but I'm ordering the old Moody's. You've got a strange guy here.
Rule number 2, own stocks.
You are joining us on a day when we have watched the stock market continue to set new highs. The S&P, the Russell, and the NASDAQ. The Dow's not far off. And the question we always ask you is, do stocks look expensive to you at these prices?
Well, they are definitely. If you had your choice between buying and holding a 30-year bond for 30 years or holding a basket of American stocks, there's just no question you're going to do better holding stocks. So it's more attractive considerably more attractive than fixed income securities. That doesn't mean they're going to go up or down tomorrow or next week or next year. But over time, a bunch of businesses that are earning high returns on capital are going to beat a bond that's fixed at roughly 3% for 30 years. And it's not my field of specialty, but actually they look stocks generally, which are their businesses, they're American businesses, 30 trillion worth of them, and they look cheaper than generally real estate. You're sitting with some cash in your pocket, you've had savings, and the question is, what do you do with it? You can buy a duplex next door and rent it out to people and do fine over time, or you can buy a small piece of farmland or something of the sort, or you can put it into something fixed income, bonds or bank deposits or whatever it may be. And stocks, if you look at American equities, American business is earning a lot of money relative to the capital put in. And the reason stocks are worth a whole lot more than they were 20 years ago or 50 years ago or 100 years ago is companies have plowed back part of the earnings. With a bond, you get it all out in interest. You get your 3% or whatever it is, and that's what you have. With stocks, you get maybe a 3% dividend, but they're plowing money back or they're repurchasing shares or doing something. And over time, that just makes a huge difference.
Rule number 3, have fun.
I was wondering, what is your definition of success and what has been your largest non-business success in life?
Well, we played ping pong against a 9-year-old girl in San Francisco. 2 weeks ago, her name's Ariel.
Yeah, how many points did you get?
She got Bill got more points off her than I did. I thought I was pretty good, too. And this little 9-year-old, she's disgusting. She should have been in bed. She totally cleaned us. No, that was a little humiliating.
Rule number 4, buy when the price is right.
I'd rather buy an attractive business than buy our own stock at its intrinsic business value. If our stock gets well below that, I've still got this strong, and I can do both, fortunately. But how an executive can say we're going to spend $10 billion buying stock and then not pay any attention to the price at which they buy it. They wouldn't buy any other business that way. Mm-hmm. And so we're price sensitive on it. On the other hand, when the price is right, there's no easier way to make money for your shareholders.
Also, to make sure you're actually taking action after watching this video, I've designed a special free worksheet just for this video. The worksheet will highlight all of the lessons learned in this video, as well as pull out our 3 favorite learnings and quotes that will inspire you to actually do something. The worksheet will also give you space to write down what your key takeaways are and your specific plan of action to make sure you're getting results. If you want the worksheet designed specifically for this video, absolutely for free, there's a link in the description below. Go click on it and start building the momentum in your life and your business. I'll see you there.
Rule number 5, persist.
You rejected by Harvard, you went to Columbia
went to
Business School,
Columbia.
and then you met the man who you really idolized, Ben Graham. And when you took his class, was he as great as you had thought he was going to be?
He really was. He only taught one semester, one class. I mean, he came up from Wall Street and taught this class. That's the reason I went to Columbia. And I knew I'd already read all the books and everything. But it was inspirational just to be around him, and it made a real difference in my life.
So when you graduated, you wanted to go work for him and his firm, and then he rejected you for an interesting reason. In those days, I understand that there were Jewish firms and non-Jewish firms, and his was a Jewish firm, and you weren't Jewish, so he said because you weren't Jewish, he didn't hire you. Is that right?
That's true. And I was ready to convert, believe me. I think they might have felt it was a little phony at the time. So but it was true that there were very few firms in Wall Street that would hire Jews at that time. And Ben only employed 5 or 6 people. But he told me to the extent that they were able to employ 5 or 6 people, he really felt that the Jews could not get into most jobs in Wall Street, and that they were going to employ only Jews.
So you moved back for a while to Nebraska, but then he ultimately changed his mind, and you went to work for Ben Graham.
I kept pestering him. Yeah, I made a real pest of myself.
Rule number 6, know when to leave.
You entered the municipal bond insurance business at an interesting time, and I think subsequently had some second thoughts about it. And I would love to know your feelings on that industry now, especially given where certain cities and commonwealths are.
Yeah, we did start guaranteeing municipals 5 years ago or so. At the time, we were getting premiums of probably over 3%. Averaging over 3%, sometimes 4 or 5%. And in almost all cases, we had other municipal bond insurers that came ahead of us. So we were second to pay, third to pay, fourth to pay sometimes, and getting this pretty fat rate. And then the rates went down dramatically, and for the same risk, within a year or two, we would have probably only been getting a quarter of the premium. And you know, insurance is attractive at one price and it's not attractive at another price. So when rates leave us, you know, we leave the business, basically, and that's what we did. If rates were high enough or appropriate in our view as to the risk involved, we would insure municipals again. I mean, we're selective about it, but we just weren't getting paid enough.
Rule number 7, make money with money.
What really gives the low rates to the very rich like me is the low tax on dividends and capital gains. If you take these rich people that the IRS singles out from 1992, they've almost had a tenfold increase in capital gains. They've had a tenfold increase almost in dividends. And those are taxed at 15%. And there's no payroll tax on it. Now, the payroll tax accounts for almost as much revenue to the government as the income tax. It's close. 800 billion plus on payroll taxes last year and about 900 billion on income taxes. That's where the money comes from in Washington. And they don't get any payroll tax to speak of on my income. I've got my tax return here.
We're going to take a look at them in a moment.
and I get taxed on up to 100,000, and my super rich friends get taxed up to 100,000, and that tax hits the people in my office very, very hard. Often they have a spouse working, so they get taxed on up to $200,000, that payroll tax. And that's this year we've had a waiver of 2 points, but that's normally at 15.3%. that alone is higher than the tax rate on capital gains or dividends.
You point out that the average tax rate for people in your audience, the average rate for people in your office is 36% of taxable income.
36%, and nobody's below 33%. And incidentally, the lowest income person in the office is higher than the 33. They don't have the low rate. So from 33 to 41 they range, and they average 36, and I'm in there with a fat 17.4, I think it is.
And why is that?
Well, it taxes, if you make money with money, you get taxed at very low rates, 15% dividends and capital gains, no payroll tax. If you make money with muscle or hard work or sweat of your brow, you get taxed at rates that move on up. And most of the people, the middle class, gets taxed at rates of either 15 or 25 on their income tax, but then they get really hit hard on the payroll tax, and that's what brings the rates in our office up to an average of 36% if you leave me out.
Rule number 8, help people.
We admire so much your legacy in philanthropy and your children's philanthropy. I'd love to just hear your philosophy around that.
Well, as my friend Charlie said, who gave away some money the other day, he says, it won't do me much good where I'm going. So, I've got everything in life I want. And, it uses a very tiny percentage of my resources. So I have some stock certificates that I bought 40 or 50 years ago down in a safe deposit box. And they have no utility to me. They can't buy anything for me that I need or want. I mean, I can go down and fondle them occasionally or something of the sort. But other than that, they're just pieces of paper. They have enormous utility for other people, and particularly if used wisely. They have no utility for me. So why in the world should I sit there and let them sit in the box? I have never given away a penny that has affected my life in any way, shape, or form. There's people that this Sunday will drop $5 into a collection plate, and it makes the difference between whether they go out for dinner or something or go to a movie. I've never done any of that. But if you have this incredible surplus, and in our giving pledge, we only call on people with $1 billion, and I'm only asking them for half. So I said when they turned me down, I say, I'm going to write a book on how to live on 500 million because there's apparently a big need for this. I found I could live on 500 million. So all the rest, and a lot less, and all the rest is surplus. And why not do, if it can provide vaccines or education or whatever it may be, or a better life for women, why not use it?
Rule number 9, be objective.
How can you tell when a company's doing a bad job repurchasing? You have to be able to figure out how to value the business properly. It's easier than you're making it sound.
Yeah. The truth is, if you look back, and I was director of the company, but Coca-Cola kept repurchasing their shares at a time when it didn't make sense. If you look at it in the years earlier, they had a terrifically good idea of repurchasing when the company only had a market value of in less than 10 billion, and they bought a lot of stock and they were aggressive about it. But they fell in love with the idea, and I was a director at the time, but they're one of many. The same thing happened at Gillette to a degree. It's interesting. Sometimes it's difficult for CEOs to be objective about their own stock price, and they think the higher it sells, the better. And it's a fine way to feel, except if you're repurchasing it and you repurchase it at prices up to the sky.
And rule number 10, the last one before some very special bonus clips, is have confidence in leaders.
Confidence is an important thing.
Sure it is.
And there was a damage to confidence based on what happened in Washington.
Charlie, I own stock in a lot of companies. If I get upset about the management, what they're doing, do I lose confidence? Yes. Do I feel different about investing with them? Yes. You've got to have confidence in your leaders. We went into World War II with confidence in our leaders. It's vital. It looked like we were losing the war for 6 months, but we never lost confidence in our leaders. And you have to believe in them, and they have to give you reason to believe in them.
Now I've got a special bonus clip that I think you're going to enjoy. But before that, it's time for the good deed of the day. This is something new. I believe that you're built to serve, and it feels so good to do something nice for somebody else. So good deed of the day, put down in the comments one thing that you need help with, that you're working on, that you'd love some support or guidance on. And then 2, go comment on somebody else's comment and give them some love, give them some support, give them some encouragement, maybe give them some connections, try to help them solve that problem, even if it's saying, I believe in you. That one little bit of encouragement can be the difference between somebody quitting and continuing on. So the good deed of the day, in the comments below, write down one thing that you need help on, that you're struggling with, that you're working on. And then part 2 is go give love to somebody else in the comments too, and let them know that you believe in them as well.
You invest most of your money, I guess, in the United States.
Yeah.
Have you increasingly been investing outside, particularly in the emerging markets, or you're not as comfortable investing in the emerging markets?
I'm comfortable in any place I understand the business well, and to some extent the rules that they operate in, and where I've got the right management. And so we will buy a business, in any one of 40 countries tomorrow if it's the right kind of business. But most businesses I hear about are in the United States. They think of Berkshire here. We're on the radar screen here to a greater extent than around the world. I have constructed a business that fits me. It's kind of crazy to spend your life painting if you're painting a subject you don't want to look at. I've gotten to paint my own painting in business on an unlimited canvas in a way. It's a different sort of place. I work with a great group of people that make my life very easy and that take good care of me. We have 25 people in the office, and if you go back, it's the exact same 25, the exact same ones. We don't have any committees at Berkshire. We don't have a public relations department. We don't have investor relations. We don't have a general counsel. We don't have a human relations department. We just don't go for anything that people do just as a matter of form. It's exactly the life I like. Go back to when I started my partnership in 1956 that Berkshire came out of. There were 7 people sitting there at a table having dinner, relatives primarily, and I said, here's the partnership agreement. It's done under Nebraska law. It's 4 or 5 pages. You don't need to read it. But I said, here's a little half-page, what I call the ground rules. And I want you to read these. And if you feel okay about that, about the interaction, what the expectations are, and all of that sort of thing, then we'll join forces. And if you don't, it's fine. Other people have, but we shouldn't be partners. I mean, if I'm going to have a partnership with somebody, I want it to be compatible. It is, and when you have a public company, you can't control who comes in. I can't control some guy that comes in and thinks we're going to pay big dividends or split the stock or something like that. So by my actions and my communications and everything, I want to attract the people that from the public market that I want, and I want to keep the others away. Costco was built. Saul Price, who started the Price Club and that thing, he sat down and figured out the customer he didn't want. And he set up a system that would keep away the customer he didn't want. Who did he not want? He didn't want somebody buying a quart of milk with somebody behind him with a basket of $200 worth of goods waiting for that. So he put in a membership fee, and by putting in a membership fee, he killed all the drop-in business, the business that belonged to the 7-Eleven. We want Berkshire to keep out people who have expectations about us that are different than ours. I mean, good for them, and I hope they find somebody they fit. But if you're going to run a church, you want your seats to be filled by people that are generally want to listen to your form of religion, and you don't want it to change every week and say, gee, I need a new group, and I'll go out and talk to a bunch of investors and get them to come to my church this Sunday, because there's only so many seats in the church. There's 1,645,000 or so A equivalent shares, and those are the seats, and I want them occupied by people that are on the same page I am. I was lucky that I got started early. I mean, it always helps if you get started early, and my dad happened to be in the investment business, so I would go down to his office on Saturdays, and so at age probably 7 or something, I started reading these books that were around the place, and so I had a 15-year jump on many people in a sense, and that helped a lot, and I was always fascinated by it. I mean, I knew what I wanted to do early, and I think that's a huge advantage too. And then you don't need a lot of brains in this business. I mean, I've always said if you got an IQ of 160, give away 30 points to somebody else, because you don't need it in investments. What you do need is emotional stability. You have to be able to think independently, and you have to be when you come to a conclusion, you have to really not care what other people say, and just follow the facts and follow your reasoning, and that's tough for a lot of people. That part I think I was just lucky with. I was born that way.
In terms of emotions, it's a truism that in investing, emotions are your enemy.
Absolutely.
That when the market's good, if you feel good, don't. If you feel bad, you should probably do it.
Right.
But how did you? What was that extra thing where so many will acknowledge that, and yet we saw in the current crisis they panicked while you went into seemingly potential disasters like GE and Goldman Sachs.
Yeah. I can't really tell you the answer. I mean, I didn't learn in school or anything. It never bothered me if people disagreed with what I thought, as long as I felt I knew the facts. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things I don't know a thing about. I just stay away from those. So I stay within what I call my circle of competence. You know, and Tom Watson said it best. He said, I'm no genius, but I'm smart in spots, and I stay around those spots. Well, I try and stay around those spots, and I just don't have a problem if somebody says, you're wrong on something. I go back and look at the facts, and I think that really is much more important, frankly, than having a few points of IQ or having an extra course or two in school or anything of the sort. You need emotional stability. If somebody told me 10 years ago what was going to happen the next 10 years, we could have made a lot of money in the bond market together, But there's always the reason afterwards. Tomorrow's paper will say stocks went down today because of, but they didn't write it this morning's paper that stocks are going to go down today. You have to know what you don't know, and you have to make sure that what you don't know isn't all important. I mean, if there's 4 boxes there, you want to get to what is knowable and which is favorable. And there's things that you'll miss out on because they belong in the other 3 boxes, one of which will be favorable, another one that's favorable. And the fact that you're missing out on 90% of the stuff doesn't really make any difference if the 10% you do is right. Shortly after I met Bill Gates, Bill's dad asked each of us to write down on a piece of paper one word that would best describe what had helped us the most. Bill and I, without any collaboration at all, each wrote the word focus. Well, focus has always been a strong part of my personality. If I get interested in something, I get really interested. If I get interested in a new subject, I want to read about it, I want to talk about it, and I want to meet people that are involved in it. Well, I look at a lot of figures just in connection with our businesses. I like to get numbers. so I'm getting reports in weekly in some businesses. But that doesn't tell me what the economy is going to do 6 months from now or 3 months from now. It tells me what's going on now with our businesses. And it really doesn't make any difference in what I do today in terms of buying stocks or buying businesses, what those numbers tell me. They're interesting, but they're not guides to me. If we buy a business, we're going to hold it forever. So we're going to have good years, bad years, in between years, maybe a disastrous year some year. We care a lot about the price. We do not care about the next 12 months. Economic predictions just don't enter into our decisions. Charlie Munger, my partner, and I, in 54 years now, we've never made a decision based on an economic prediction. We make business predictions about what individual businesses will do over time, and we compare that to what we have to pay for them. But we have never said yes to something because we thought the economy was going to do well in the next year or 2 years, and we've never said no to anything because we were right in the middle of a panic even if the price was right. Well, I've said many times that if you get to be 65 or 70 and later, and the people that you want to have love you actually do love you, you're a success. I've never seen anybody that reaches that age. I mean, I'm not talking about somebody that's in extreme poverty or pain or something, but I've never seen anybody that, if they have a lot of people that love them, that is other than happy. And I've seen some very, very wealthy people that they give testimonial dinners to and name schools after and everything. And nobody loves them. I was sort of wired for capital allocation, and being wired for capital allocation a couple of 100 years ago in Nebraska wouldn't have been a thing. And even now, being born in various parts of the world, it wouldn't have meant much. But here I was in this soon-to-be very rich capitalistic system, and it just so happened that what I did paid off enormously in a market system like we have. And if I'd had a talent in some other area that was way less commercial, I mean, I would have had a good time doing it, but it wouldn't have paid off like this. But of course, Jay said it perfectly when he talked about he's in there recording for himself, and the money comes afterwards. I mean, I got to do what I love. I mean, and it doesn't get any luckier than that. If you can spend your lifetime, and I'm 80 now, and doing things you love every single day. I mean, I would be doing what I do now, and I would have done it in the past, if the payoff had been in seashells or shark's teeth or anything else. If you can go to work every morning, I tap dance to work, and I come down, and every day's exciting. I like to sit and think, and I spend a lot of time doing that, and sometimes it's pretty unproductive, but I find it enjoyable to think about, particularly about business or investment problems. They're easy. It's the human problems that are the tough ones. Sometimes there aren't any good answers with human problems. There's almost always a good answer with money. I've got this rule, the first rule is don't lose, and the second rule is never forget the first rule. So it really isn't so much having a lot of brilliant decisions. It's just not really having some terrible ones. And frankly, I did learn from Ben Graham how to avoid ever having any disasters in investments. It wasn't that you were going to come up with the very smartest thing, but if you never have any significant losses, some singles and doubles will produce a lot of runs before you get through. You're lucky in life if you can find your passion. I tell the students, you may have to take a job or two, you got to eat, but never give up searching for the job that's your passion. Try to find the job that you would have if you were independently rich. That's the job I have. And when you find that job, the job that causes you to be excited every day and forget about the pay, and where you associate with people you love, doing what you love, it doesn't get any better than that. My partner Charlie is 89, and we were talking about that this weekend. I'm 82, he's 89. We do what we love every day with people we love, and they seem to like us okay. So, how can it be any better? And just cost of living does not equate to standard of living. And the standard of living is, achieving what you want to achieve, working with people that you love, and you don't need that much money. Right. I love to ride around in a private plane. I will totally acknowledge that. Leaving that out, I basically, leaving out taxes and charity and things like that, I can easily live on $100,000 a year, and I wouldn't live better if I had 8 houses, if I had a 400-foot yacht or anything of the sort. I've been on 400-foot yachts, and I've been in a lot of fancy houses, but I'm in a house that I bought 55 years ago. It's warm in the winter, it's cool in the summer, it has everything I wanted, plus it has all kinds of good memories. Right. My kids have good thoughts about it. I can't imagine living any better. I paid $31,500 for it. I could pay $31 million for a house. The most important thing, aside from the things I've talked about already, is really who you associate with. You want to associate with people that are better than you are. I mean, basically, you'll go in the direction of the people that you associate with, and you want to have the right heroes. You want people, if you want to emulate somebody, you better pick very carefully who you want to emulate. And when obviously you can't pick your parents, they're going to have an enormous influence on you, but you don't get a choice on that. But you get choices as you go down the line, and who you admire, who you want to copy, and the most important for most people in terms of that decision is their spouse. It's also important in terms of a partner in business, but the partner in life is the most important one. You want to pick a spouse that's better than you are. When you get to my age, you will not measure how well you've done by how much money you've got. I can guarantee you that. You'll all do fine on money anyway. I mean, think about it. 7 hours a day, you're in a bed. You got exactly the same mattress I've got. If you don't, we'll sell it to you at the Furniture Mart. We're on a parity. I can't outdo you, in terms of my sleeping enjoyment. You can match it by buying this mattress, which we'll give you a special price on. Just mention my name. We eat at the same places. We eat at Dairy Queen, particularly if you're in my position because we own it. But we eat at McDonald's and Burger King, and when I leave here, I'll stop by a fast food place on the way. So our eating experiences are the same. We travel the same. I mean, I had a 10-year-old car up till about a year ago, and it just doesn't make any difference to me. They all work. We live in a place that's warm in the winter and it's cool in the summer, and we watch the Super Bowl on big screen TV. You do it, I do it. We dress more or less the same. I mean, I pay more for my clothes, but they look cheap when I put them on. So we're really on a parity. Yeah. So the money isn't going to be that big a deal. Everybody in this country is going to, with the intelligence this group has and the energy you have, you're going to do well. So what's the difference? What really counts? Well, I would say that you will measure, health is enormously important, and that's a matter of a fair amount of luck. I mean, so I'm not shortchanging it, I'm just saying you can't do too much about that. But you will measure your success in life by how many, and extent, whether it's the people you want at 70 or whatever the age may be, you'll measure it by how many of them really love you, in the end. I mean, you can't buy love. I mean, it doesn't work. You can buy sex, you can buy testimonial dinners, you can buy your name on buildings, you can do all kinds of things. But the only way you get to be, love is to be lovable. It's kind of irritating, actually. If you've got a lot of money, it'd be more fun to just write out a check for $1 million. So everybody, from now on loves me. But it doesn't work that way. And in fact, the only way is to be lovable. And I've got this friend who came out of Auschwitz and had at least one member of the family die there. And what is it now? It's 60 years later. She still, when she looks at people, it's a Polish Jew, when she looks at people, the question she asks herself in determining who she really trusts as friends, the one question in her mind is, would they hide me? Now, when you get to be 70, if you've got a lot of people that would hide you, you've had a successful life. I know people who have a tremendous amount of money, no one would hide. Their own kids wouldn't hide them. I mean, they really wouldn't. I mean, their business associates wouldn't, or anybody else. If it really came down to it, they don't have anybody's respect. They've got their attention maybe with money or something of the sort, but nobody loves them. And my friend Tom Murphy at Cap Cities TV, I mean, dozens of people would hide Murph. All kinds of people would hide my wife. Ben Graham, a lot of people would hide. My dad would have had a number. And then, like I say, I can tell you people that everybody may pay homage to them, and the kids may put up with them and hope they don't change their will or something. But the truth is that nobody would hide them. And if you've got a lot of people that would hide you when you get to be 70, you will have had a very successful life. By far the best investment you can make is in yourself. I mean, for example, communication skills. I tell the students that come that they're going to graduate schools and business, and they're learning all these complicated formulas and all that. If they just learn to communicate better, and both in writing and in person, they increase their value at least 50%. And, I mean, if you can't communicate, somebody says, it's like winking at a girl in the dark. Nothing happens, basically. And you have to be able to get forth your ideas, and that's relatively easy. I did it myself with the Dale Carnegie course. Some people wish I'd taken a shorter course now in terms of my talking later on. But it's just hugely important. And if you invest in yourself, nobody can take it away from you. Everything you do learn is cumulative. I mean, that doesn't mean that industries stay good forever or businesses stay good forever. But learning to think about business models, what I learned at 20 is useful to me now. What I learned at 25 is useful to me now. And so it's not a field that changes dramatically in terms of the underlying principles. It's like physics. I mean, there's underlying principles. Now they're doing all kinds of things with physics they weren't doing 50 years ago. But if you got the principles, if you know what makes a good business, if you know what makes a good manager, if you know what makes a good product, and you learn that in one business, there is some transference to other businesses as you go along, and you learn what things you're not going to understand. I mean, knowing what to leave out is just as important as knowing what to focus on. And I don't think I can win every game. Somebody said, how do you beat Bobby Fischer? You play him any game except chess. So I don't play Bobby Fischer chess. And there's a lot of value to learning that over time and learning what you're good at and what you're not good at. All of you in this room have the brains to do extremely well in life. You've all got the energy to do extremely well in life. And then the question is, how do you apply it? If you've got a 200 horsepower motor, do you get 200 horsepower out of it? Do you get your full potential, or do you get 100 horsepower or 50 horsepower? Now there's two things that can hold you back in getting the full horsepower out of your engine, whatever it may be. All of you have big enough engines. And one of those is a lack of education, but that probably isn't going to happen to very many people in this room. If you did have a lack of education, if you didn't have a chance to get a decent education in life, it wouldn't make any difference what that potential was because you'd never unlock it. But the second most important thing, and equally as important, is in terms of the habits that you develop, in terms of what you do with yourself. When we hire people, we look for three qualities. We look for integrity, we look for intelligence, and we look for energy. But if they don't have the first one, integrity, the other two will kill you. Because if you're hiring somebody without integrity, you really want them to be dumb and lazy, don't you? I mean, last thing in the world you want for them is to be smart and energetic. So smart and energetic only goes with integrity. But the nice thing about you make your own decision on that. You can't change your IQ or how far you can throw a football or how high you can jump or the color of your hair very easily. But you can elect to have integrity that matches anybody else's. And if you match that with intelligence, which you have, and energy, which you have, you will get an extraordinary result, and you'd be very foolish to sell me 10% of yourself for $50,000. On the other hand, if you don't match it with that, your potential will, in a significant part, go unused. I do tell those students, that if I gave you a car and it'd be the only car you get in the rest of your life, you take care of it like you can't believe it. Any scratch, you'd fix that moment. You'd read the owner's manual. You'd keep a garage and do all these things. And you get exactly one mind and one body in this world. And you can't start taking care of it when you're 50. By that time, you'll have rusted out if you haven't done anything. So you should really make sure that you just remember that you just got one mind and body to get through life with and to do the most with it.
One of the things you do in your annual report, which has become a classic, is you will discuss what went wrong, like Dexter, and what you learned,
how
and what you learned from it.
Sure,
tough to do.
Well, it's very important to recognize mistakes. I mean, if somebody goes around and says, I never made a mistake, I mean, you quit listening to them. I mean, they're in a dream world. So facing up to it. It's a little like in terms of discussing issues. You should be able to discuss the other fellow's position just as well as you can discuss your own. So I mean, that's part of thinking well, and certainly part of making good decisions in business is recognizing the poor decisions you've made and why they were poor, and that doesn't mean you never do the same thing. I mean, because sometimes it was a freak situation, but I have made lots of mistakes. I'm going to make more mistakes, but Babe Ruth struck out a lot of times. I mean, it's the name of the game that you do it. You don't want to expect perfection in yourself. You want to strive to do your best, but it's too demanding to expect perfection in yourself. And it does some good to recognize them and not start trying to go around kidding people about them.
What other habits did you cultivate in your 20s and your 30s that you now see as being foundational to your success as a business person?
Yeah, well, I knew a lot about what I do when I was 20. I mean, I'd really read a lot, and I aspired to learn everything that I could about the subject. So intellectually, I knew a lot. I did not know a lot about human behavior. I mean, that you can't learn really out of reading books, but it's very important to understand people. And I say to the students, just imagine you could buy, or you could be given 10% of the future earnings of one person that you know, among everybody you know. Now, are you going to pick the person that's the smartest? Are you going to pick the person that can dance the best, or that can run the fastest, or anything like that?
It's the right height.
No, anything. No. You're going to pick the person that has the right habits, that is cheerful, generous, gives other people credit for what they do. And when you look at all of the qualities that you admire in other people, which would cause you to pick that person, say to yourself, which of those qualities can't I have myself? Because they are, you determine whether you have them. So just write them down on a piece of paper. Who is the person that you admire the most or like the best? Why do I like them? And just write it down and then say, which of these can I do myself? And the truth is you can do them. And then also, if you really want to carry it to the next extreme, you pick the person you dislike the most. And why do you dislike that person? They're never fair about things, basically. They always claim more credit than they're due and everything. And write down those qualities and say, if you dislike that in some other person, why in the world would you want to have those yourself? So you just get rid of those. And it's a pretty simple thing to do, but you want to be the person that if you could pick your best friend, that you would have the same qualities. As a general matter, as a one piece of specific financial advice, I would say, avoid credit cards. Just forget about them. We're in various businesses that issue credit cards. The American public loves credit cards. But if you start revolving debt on credit cards, you're going to be paying 18 or 20%. And you can't make progress in your financial life going around borrowing money at 18 or 20%. You can make a lot of money by lending it out at 18 or 20% over time. If you can find anybody that's good that will borrow from you. But you don't want to be on the side of the equation that's always behind in life. I was lucky. I'd saved about $10,000 by the time I got out of school. That $10,000 was really worth millions I might have earned later on, because after you get a family and everything, the expenses roll in. But those were my tools to work with, but it was only because I was ahead of the game. If you're behind the game by $10,000 at some point and paying 18 or 20% interest on it, you will never, you'll never get out of it. So the trick, I've got a partner that says, all I want to know is where I'm going to die, so I'll never go there. And that's true in financial matters as well. You want to figure out where you don't want to be ahead of time and avoid that. And I get about a dozen letters a day from people who are having terrible problems. And there are two reasons why they have terrible problems. One is a number of them have had health problems of some sort. I mean, they have really been hit by or somebody in their family has been hit by some kind of catastrophic illness. And that is it's a terrible thing to happen to any family. And they run up bills they can't pay, and really only society can solve that one in terms of protecting people against that. That's just plain bad luck. But the other one is from people who run up credit card debt, and they're facing bankruptcy, or they've been through bankruptcy once before, and they owe a whole bunch of money, and they can't even pay the interest, let alone pay any principal. And half of my letters come from people like that, and that problem is avoidable. Catastrophic illness is not, but credit card debt is something you bring on yourself, and it's way better, it's way easier to stay out of trouble than to get out of trouble financially. And I will guarantee you, if you run up big credit card debt, you will be in trouble probably the rest of your life in terms of your financial situation. On the other hand, if you get ahead of the game, even it's on a very modest scale, so that money is coming in from investing, and people owe you money, or equities owe you ownership, you'll be way ahead of the game compared to paying it, always paying your creditors every month. So my advice to you is, if you can't pay for it, don't buy it. You don't need 150 IQ to do what I do, thank God. You don't need 140, you don't need 135. You may need 115 or something like that. But you do need discipline. You have to wait until you see the fat pitch to swing at. Because investing is a no-called strike game. If I were a baseball player and I only liked pitches 2 inches above my navel, some guy could learn that and he could pitch me, 3 or 4 inches below that, and I get called out on strikes because I never find a pitch I like. You can get called out on strikes in baseball. You have to swing at pitches that you don't even necessarily like, particularly after the count gets to 2 strikes. In business, you don't have to swing at anything. You can sit there and the paper says General Motors at 68, or it says General Electric at 115, or it says General Dynamics at 63. And if you don't like those prices, you don't have to swing. You can wait there day after day after day after day, and there are no called strikes. Now, when you swing, when you decide to buy something, then, if you swing and miss, it's a strike. But it's a marvelous game to be in because there are no called strikes, and you can simply wait for that one time in a month or 6 months or a year or 2 or 3 years when you really know what you're doing, where you like the price, where you like the people running the business, and then you swing, and you only need a few swings in your lifetime.
How do you deal with failure? And what's your advice to young entrepreneurs like me, in this case, especially with regards to failure and how to approach it?
Yeah, well, if you fail, you really do dust yourself off and get right back in. I mean, you're going to fail at some things. You're going to have some human relationships that don't work out. Fairly significant number of people get divorced. I mean, that's a very big decision to have turn out badly. But I think if you study almost everybody, and read Kay's book, Personal History, and everybody fails at some things. I mean, particularly when you're younger. I mean, you do have less experience in evaluating humans, and and just knowing about whatever it may be businesses. But it is not fatal. I mean, if you're healthy and you live in this, particularly living in this country, there's going to be an opportunity that comes along. I got turned down for the Harvard Business School when I got out of the University of Nebraska. And I remember, I went to Chicago to get interviewed. This is when you traveled on the train, and so I spent 10 hours going there. And this fellow looked at me, and about 10 minutes he said, "Forget it, Bell." And now I got to go back on the train 10 hours and think, what am I going to tell my dad? What am I going to tell my dad? I mean, my dad always told me I could do anything, and everything. Now I've just gotten turned down, But it turned out to be one of the best things that ever happened to me, because then I went to Columbia, where Ben Graham was. In fact, it probably even affected who I married, because I took a 1-year course at Columbia instead of 2 years at Harvard, and she might have found some other guy during that time. And almost everything in my life that looked like a failure has either usually it's turned into a success. I mean, the world isn't over. If you have bad luck in health, that's tough. I mean, there's just no getting away. I've been lucky on that. But the other kind of things, if you're healthy and you're bright and you've got decades ahead of you, if something goes wrong, if you find yourself working for the wrong employer and they're doing things you don't approve of, or they're not treating you fairly, the world isn't over yet. You just go out and find somebody else. I got an awful lot of good advice from my dad, and he didn't lay it on me. I mean, he just you picked it up from him, but there was never any of this do this, do that type of thing at all. But I think he really taught me that it's more important in terms of what's on your inner scorecard than your outer scorecard. I mean, some people get in a position where they're thinking all of the time of what the world's going to think of this or that, instead of what they themselves think about it. And if your inner scorecard, if you're comfortable with that, I think you're going to have a pretty happy life. And I think the people that strive too much for the outer scorecard sometimes find that it's a little hollow when they get all through. I should mention one thing about reading. It was at the library here at Columbia that I wish I spent probably more time than any other student. I lived there practically. But I pulled the book out there, happened to be Who's Who in America, and it told me something about my professor, Benjamin Graham. And then I looked up, and I went to the librarian, and I said, I want to learn more about this, because I learned this over here. That changed my whole life. We own Geico now because of that librarian directing me to some other book and then following through on that. It's the chance. I read about 1/5 the pace that Bill does, but I still spend 5 or 6 hours a day reading. I mean, you can learn so much. I particularly love biography. Just to be able to live the lives of these people that have been so extraordinary, the lessons and the discouragements they face, just everything about it. So you can't get enough of reading.
How do you decide what you invest your time and money in?
Yeah, well, I like to find businesses that have good economics. Now, what are good economics? Well, good economics are a business that has some kind of a moat around it that makes its product or its service or its location or something a little more desirable to the customer than any other sort of comparable product. The number one candy bar in the last 30 or 40 years has been Snickers. People don't fool around with different candy bars. They fool around with different length dresses, they fool around, with all kinds of things, but they don't fool around with candy bars because they figure, they're going to go in and lay out 50 cents or whatever it is and put it in their mouth. And they're not going to, for 50 cents and putting it in your mouth, I mean, you're not going to say, I'll lay out 45 cents and put something else in my mouth. So you find that very stable. And we like businesses that we think we can figure out where they're going to be in 10 or 15 years. I don't know where the information technology businesses are going to be in 10 or 15 years. I know where Snickers bars are going to be in 10 or 15 years. They're going to be selling just about the way they do now. I know where Wrigley's gum is going to be in 10 or 15 years. There's not going to be a lot of innovation in chewing gum. The internet's not going to cause people to quit chewing gum either. I mean, at least, Gates may think so, but I don't think so. But it's predictability
regarding the sustainability of a competitive advantage, something special about a product.
You both have several managers working under you, so I was wondering what are some steps that a new entrant into the job market can take to accelerate their journey towards an upper level management position?
Yeah, well, one thing I will tell you that I didn't realize when I was getting out of school is how much the unusual person will jump out at you. I mean, you know, and it isn't because they got 200 IQs or anything like that. It's really because of just how they behave, you know, what they bring, the energy they bring, the commitment they bring, the quality of how they do things, how they treat the people around them, all kinds of things. But you will jump out much more than you might anticipate. One of the things you would want to be sure to do is, whether you like it or not, get very comfortable, it may take a while, with public speaking, for example. I mean, that's an asset that will last you 50 or 60 years, and it's a liability if you don't like doing it and are uncomfortable doing it, that also will last you 50 or 60 years, and it's a necessary skill. But a lot of the skills are just human skills. If you get the best out of people around you, that's a rare talent, and it doesn't correlate with IQ. It correlates with an attitude and toward the world and toward other people. And it's a talent that if you work at early and you're really conscious about it, you know, you don't have to show up other people. You know, you don't have to be smarter than they are or anything else. You want to bring out the best in them. It will pay huge dividends.
If you were to do it all over again, you're in our shoes. What industry would that be in? Where would you start your own business today?
I'd do the same thing. Yeah. I mean, for one thing, I'd be a failure at anything else probably. I mean, I'm not gonna. No, I mean, I had fun when I was in my 20s, my 30s. Now I'm 86, and I'm having fun. And so I advise students as much as possible, look for the job that you would take if you didn't need a job. I mean, you know, don't sleepwalk through life, and don't say it's all going to be great. You know, I'll do this and I'll do that, and you know, I'm just marking time till I get to be older. That, as I've told people, that's like saving up sex for your old age. I mean, it just is not it is not a good idea.
What are you urging them to do?
I'll explain just what I'm talking about. Now, you really want to be doing what you love doing, and you can't necessarily find it on your first job.
Right.
But don't give up before you find it.
It is always being ahead of the game rather than getting behind the game. It's saving a little, no matter how you do it. I mean, I delivered papers, I worked at Penny's, I sold golf balls, I had a pinball machine around. I did a lot of things that enabled me to accumulate about $10,000 by the time I got out of school. 10,000 doesn't go as far now as it did then, but having anything so that you're ahead of the game and not getting behind the game is enormously important. I mean, just, you know, if you're going to run a 100-yard dash against a bunch of people in life, if you can figure it out so that when the gun goes off, you're 10 or 15 yards ahead instead of 10 or 15 yards behind, it's going to make an enormous difference in how that race comes out. So having some net resources doesn't make much difference whether they're in stocks or bonds, in my view, but and not having debt when that gun goes off when you get out of school is a huge plus over being behind the game. And you know, it may come from delivering a paper out in the morning, it may come from part-time work someplace, but put aside a few dollars for yourself so that when the time comes and you enter the workforce, you're ahead of the game and not behind. And then once you get there, don't get behind by buying a whole lot of things that you figure you're going to pay for someday while you're paying 20% interest in between.
You will move in the direction of the people that you associate with. So it's important to associate with people that are better than yourself, and actually the most important decision many of you make, not all of you, will be the spouse you choose. And you want to associate with people who are the kind of person you'd like to be. You'll move in that direction, and the most important person by far in that respect is your spouse. I can't overemphasize how important that is, and you're right. The friends you have, they will form you as you go through life, and make some good friends, keep them for the rest of your life, but have them be people that you admire as well as like.
Is there a meaningful distinction to be drawn between making money out of investment and making money out of speculation? It's always a bet, isn't it? It's always a gamble.
No, it isn't a gamble. There is a real distinction. Basically, it's subjective, but an investment attitude, you look to the asset itself to produce the return. So if I buy a farm and I expect it to produce $80 an acre for me in terms of its revenue from corn and soybeans, and it cost me $600. I'm looking at the return from the farm itself. I'm not looking at the price of the farm every day or every week or every year. The habits you develop, and I go back. The other thing is have the right heroes. I mean, I've always been lucky in that respect. And if the people you look up to are going to form your vision of what the world, how you want to be in later life. I'll give you two pieces of advice. I'd invest as much in myself as you can. I mean, you're your own biggest asset by far. I mean, you've got all kinds of potential. All the people in this room, you're lucky to be in this country, gotten a good education, but most people go through life using up a very, very small part of their potential. There can be all kinds of wonderful investment opportunities out there that I don't understand. I don't know what cocoa beans are going to do next year. Maybe you know, but I don't know. I don't know what crude oil is going to sell for. But I don't have to know. I just have to know the things. I have to know what I know. I have to know where the limits of my understanding are, what I call what my circle of competence is. And if I'm only able to evaluate 5% of the businesses in the world, no problem. I just stay within that 5% and try and find something. And most people get in trouble in investments because they get itchy. They can't discipline themselves, and they hear about other people making money. Nothing upsets people so much as to hear about their friends making money. I mean, that's very destructive to discipline, because they think, I'm smarter than that guy next door, and he just bought that new car with the money he made trading stocks on the internet, so why can't I? Well, the answer is you can't over time. You will lose money if you trade stocks actively. And it's hard to exercise the discipline. But anytime you buy something, you should be able to take out a one-page sheet of paper and say, I'm buying General Motors at 65. I'm buying General Electric at 150 because. And you should write down the reasons. If you can't fill out the sheet, if it's because somebody told me about it at a cocktail party last night, that's not good enough. If it's because my broker told me about it, that's not good enough. You've got to have a reason for thinking that it makes an intelligent investment. You do the same thing if you're buying a farm or an apartment house. If you're buying a farm, you'd say, I'm buying this farm at $1,000 an acre because I think I can earn $60 an acre on it. If corn sells at such and such, and soybean sells at such and such, and yield is such and such. And you'd figure it out. That's the same reason you buy businesses. And when you buy stocks, you're buying a little piece of a business. And that's probably the most important thing to remember in investing, is that when you are buying a stock, you're buying a little piece of the business. And if you are buying it at an attractive price for the business, for the whole business, you're going to make money. And if you aren't, over time you won't make money. Charlie Munger and I have been making stock decisions and business decisions one way or another together now for 55 years. We have never the macro doesn't enter into it, nor does political. We have not made decisions differently because one party or the other's in power. We have not made decisions based on whether we thought interest rates were going to go up or down, or what was going to happen with labor negotiations someplace. You don't want to give up what you know how to do because of opinions which you don't know whether are right or not, and which are going to be transitory in any event. So you really go out there every day and do whatever makes the most sense. So when we buy the auto dealerships last week, we don't factor in anything about the Fed, about the deadlock in politics, about what's going on around the world. Those are all important things, but they don't affect whether those dealerships, which we're buying to own 100 years, they don't affect whether they're going to make money in the year 2024 or the 2034 or 2044. And the important thing is whether we get a good business with good management at a sensible price. It's very important to have the right framework. You need to have an approach to investing that's sound. And Graham's approach is simple, but some people adopt to it, and which I did immediately, and most people don't. But if you have the right philosophy, you will find opportunities as you go through the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years.
I would follow my passion. I mean, whatever turns you on. You know, I was lucky. I found something early that turned me on. But you don't want to take a job just for the money. You don't want to take a job for an organization that you really don't feel good about, or work for people that you don't feel good about. You really want to be excited when you get out of bed every morning. And it won't necessarily be the job that you have 10 years later, but you'll be learning so much as you go along. And you know, I took a job with Ben Graham, my hero, and it, you know, I never asked the salary, and I found at the end of the month when I got my first paycheck what I was earning, because I just knew it was the right thing to be doing. So I would follow your passion. I think you'll learn more about yourself if you do it that way. I bought my first stock when I was 11. I was at Rose Hill at the time, and I bought 3 shares of City Service Preferred at 38, and it went down to 27, which is something I still remember, even though I was 11 at the time. And then it went up to 40, and I sold it. I made $5 on my 3 shares after commissions, and then it went to 200 and something. So, you know, I probably remember that a little better than if I'd been doing it on paper. And I fooled around doing a lot of things between about age 11 and 19 in the stock market. I did charts, I did all kinds of technical analysis, I read every book I could get on the subject, and I didn't do that well. I didn't do terrible, but I was really just floundering around. But that meant by the age of 19, when I read Ben Graham's book, I was at the University of Nebraska in Lincoln, I went and bought this book called The Intelligent Investor, just come out, and it had an enormous impact on me. Now, if I hadn't done, in the previous 8 years, if I hadn't been all over the lot, I'm not so sure that book would have had the same impact on me. I mean, by that time, I was prepared to read Ben Graham's book, which changed my life financially in an incredible way. I mean, I wouldn't be up here today if I hadn't read that book. But yeah, part of life is getting prepared so that when something does happen that's significant, you can grasp the significance of it and know what to do with it. And I would say that first 8 years of fooling around, even though it produced nothing financially to speak of, produced a lot in terms of getting my mind prepared for when I really did read something that made sense. So I was ready to accept it.
There are lots of lousy businesses, you know, and there's lots of wonderful businesses. And my job over the years has been to try and figure out which is which, and I've made plenty of mistakes. I bought a company called Dexter Shoes. In the early 90s, I paid $400+ million for it, and it made a lot of money before I bought it. But, you know, as soon as I bought it, they pulled some switch or something, and it immediately started losing money. And it was because of foreign competition, so on, or maybe it was because I owned it, I don't know. And it went to zero. And the worst thing was that I'd paid for it in stock, so that $400 million in stock I gave at the time is now worth about $5 billion. So every time Berkshire stock goes down, I feel a little bit better because of my opportunity loss on this business. But you know, when I looked at Dexter Shoe, they had a good position in retailers. They turned out good shoes. They had a great workforce, all kinds of things. But I just forgot one thing, that they weren't going to make shoes in the United States anymore. So you make mistakes, and it does pay to recognize quickly when you've made them. If you've got a good person running a business and it isn't making any money, you know, you're in the wrong business, and you've got to face up to that. Stocks sell at silly prices from time to time. Most stocks at one time or another sell at very silly prices. And it doesn't take a high IQ to figure out that they're cheap, but it does take a temperament that's willing to step up and actually act. I tell people, if they're going in the investment business, if you got 160 IQ, sell 30 points to somebody else, because you won't need it. I mean, I figured out very early, you don't have to be that smart in this business, which is fortunate, but you do have to have the right temperament. And you have to be able to ignore what other people are saying and simply look at the facts and decide, is this stock which is selling at X worth 2X? And occasionally you'll find things like that, and when you don't find them, you don't do anything. So that's my generalized stock tip.
What are the key indicators you look for within companies before making an investment?
Well, I look for something that does give them a motor, Rob.
We have a company called See's Candy out on the West Coast. See's Candy is boxed chocolates. If you give a box of See's chocolates to your girlfriend on the first date and she kisses you, we own you. You know, I mean, we can raise the price tomorrow and you'll buy the same box. You're not going to fool around with success. So the key there is the response. You do not want to go home on Valentine's Day and say to your wife or your sweetheart, preferably they're the same person, you don't say, here, honey, I took the low bid. It doesn't work. Price is, to a degree, is immaterial. If you've got an economic castle, people are going to come and want to take that castle away from you. And you better have a strong moat. You better have a knight in the castle that knows what he's doing. If you tell me who your heroes are, I can tell you how you're going to turn out to quite an extent by this point in life. And I have been extraordinarily lucky in that none of my heroes ever let me down. I mean, the ones I came up with throughout their lives, I've never felt that I've been let down in any way with it. Number one was my dad, and had a huge impression on me. My wife, who is here, is one of my heroes. I mean, she is, you know, in terms of she's taught me a tremendous amount, and never seen anybody any better with human beings than she is. And you can, you know, Yogi Berra again said you can observe a lot just by watching. And I watched my dad, and I've watched her, and I had a professor, Ben Graham, back at Columbia, and had a huge impact on me. So I have been lucky in that I've had terrific heroes, and they haven't let me down. And that takes you a long, long way. I've gone through one or two periods where we're kind of tough in life, but not. I mean, everybody's had that, but having the right heroes will take you right through it.
You haven't bought the stock. You're an admirer of Jeff Bezos. A listing of the richest people in America came out. He's number one. I think your friend Bill Gates is number two. You're number three. So you can see what he's done in myriad ways.
Yeah.
And of course, the question is, how come you haven't bought Amazon? Is there still time to buy? Would you still buy it?
Oh, I always admired Jeff. I mean, I met him 20 years ago or so, and I thought he was something special, but I didn't realize you could go from books to what's happened there. No, I mean, he had a vision and executed in an incredible way, something that it would not have, you know, but there's a lot of games I miss. I would have missed, you know, I would have missed Microsoft even if I gotten to know Bill earlier or something. Those just aren't my games. I don't worry about the things that I miss that are outside my circle of competence of evaluating. I have missed things that were within my circle, and that's a terrible mistake. Those are my biggest mistakes. You haven't seen them. But I don't, it's not a mistake because I miss Netscape or something like that at all. I would say that maybe 5% of the companies or 10% of the companies at most are within an area of my circle of competence. There's something I should be able to understand.
Warren is probably the most rational person I've ever met. Charlie Munger would be a close rival. And Charlie became a man that Warren depended on heavily. And I think his first experiences in the discarded cigar butt era convinced him that it was not exactly where he wanted to be.
He'd made so much money for so long doing what he'd been taught by Ben Graham, which is to buy these very cheap stocks. And if they were cheap enough, he didn't care it was a lousy company and a lousy management. He knew he was going to make money anyway just because of the cheapness.
Charlie Munger has had a big impact on me in moving me toward looking for wonderful companies at fair prices rather than fair companies at wonderful prices. And that was enormously important because it enabled Berkshire to scale up in a way that would have been impossible to do otherwise. We were mental partners right from the moment we met.
I want to know, going back 50 years, what it was like when you first met Warren.
Well, I thought he was a prodigy. And I got a lot of criticism. My wife said, "Why are you paying such enormous respect to that young man with a crew cut who won't eat vegetables?"
He's ungodly smart. He's got a much broader intellect than I do. And he's magnificent at being able to condense important ideas into just a very few words.
If you're not interested in the economic scene right now, you're mentally dead.
Charlie has no tact.
All right, let's talk a little bit about bankers.
Charlie on Friday compared them to heroin addicts.
Yeah, well, that's colorful, Charlie, but I would not have chosen that.
I once wrote of him that when they handed out humility, he didn't get his fair share.
The ideal way to run a headquarters is to have one man, preferably over 80, sitting in an office by himself. Anything else is pure frippery.
He's always honest in what he tells me, so I listen to him.
We never had an argument. We just kind of roll with it easily. Suppose Warren doesn't want to do something that I would have done. And suppose that happens 4 times over 40 years or something. What the hell difference does it make to me? Net, the record is working out fine.
How do I value the business that Berkshire acquires? Well, the first thing I have to decide when somebody calls me is valuing this business within my circle of competence. I don't know how to value Microsoft. I don't know how to value Oracle. I mean, if Larry Ellison calls me or Bill Gates calls me, and they don't. But if any of those, I don't know, or biotech or anything, I wouldn't know how to value it. I just, I'd wish them well and tell them, I think it's worth twice as much as they think it is, but I'm just not in the mood to buy today. I don't know. So it has to be within my circle of competence. My circle of competence, businesses I can understand. And when I say understand, I don't mean understand how to use a computer or not use a computer in terms of a computer company. I mean understand what the economic characteristics of the business are and what the company's really going to look like in 5 or 10 or 20 years. Bill Gates will tell you that if he were investing, he would buy Berkshire rather than Microsoft because it's so much easier to understand what our businesses are going to look like, whereas he's in a business where you're going to really have to be doing things differently over time. So I know that Wrigley's is going to be the #1 chewing gum in the country. I know Snickers is going to be the #1 candy bar in the country 10 years from now. It's been the #1 candy bar for 40 years. You don't have to be very bright to understand that when people lay out 50 cents for something that they stick in their mouth, that they're not about to experiment. I mean, we try to look at businesses we can understand. If you buy a business, if you buy a farm, you go up and look, every couple of weeks to see how far the corn is up, and you worry too much about whether somebody says this is going to be a year of low prices because exports are being affected or anything like that. You buy a farm and you hold it for. I've got one farm that I bought in the 1980s, and my son runs it, but I've been there once. I mean, it doesn't grow faster if I go and stare at it. I can't cheer for it. More effort, or something like that. And I know there's going to be some years when prices are going to be good and some when the prices aren't going to be good. I know there's years when yields will be better than others. But I bought the farm, and if it just doesn't. I don't care about economic predictions on it or anything of the sort. I do care that over the years it's well tended to in terms of rotating crops, and I hope yields get better, which they generally have. In fact, that farm 100 years ago would have probably produced 30 bushels, maybe 35 bushels of corn per acre, and now in a good year, it'd be 200. I mean, we've really made progress in this country. That's one reason commodity prices, if you go back a couple hundred years, they've moved so little, is because we've just gotten better and better at whether it's cotton or whether it's corn or soybeans or all kinds of things. And you and I have benefited from that.
And so Apple is kind of like a farm.
Well, it's a long-term investment, and if you own the best auto dealership in town, the best brand, and you had somebody good running it, you wouldn't drop by every day and say, how many people have come in today, or I think interest rates are going up a little, maybe it'll slow down our sales or anything. No, you buy it knowing there's 365 days a year, and you're going to own it for 20 years, so that's 7,300 days, and things are going to be different from day to day and year to year. You shouldn't buy it if the day-to-day stuff is important.
Both of us know that we've done better by having ethics. Warren's not interested in making money by cheating people.
Warren's opinions of Wall Street investment bankers would not endear him to their mothers. He feels that they're, for the most part, not out for their clients. They're out for their own business interests.
In the late 1960s, there were just a flood of accounting shenanigans and mergers built upon false accounting and misleading people. It was a time when a lot of charlatans were prevailing in Wall Street and were being applauded by Wall Street. And I understood what the game was about, but I didn't want to play in it. So I closed down the partnership at the end of 1969, and I took on the title of chairman for Berkshire Hathaway. The question is about the personal qualities we look for in the executives we place at our various companies. The first thing is we don't usually place them. I mean, they come with them. We don't have anybody to place. So I have the problem occasionally, if somebody dies or to replace a CEO, but most of our CEOs came with the deal. Clayton Homes, which we're buying, comes with Kevin Clayton running it. We will put no one in there. He will run the place just as before. But in terms of the personal quality, when a seller comes to me with a business, whether it's Clayton or any of the others, Ike Friedman at Borsheim's, Mrs. B at Nebraska Furniture Mart, when they come to me, the first question I have to ask myself, because I'm counting on them to run the place, I have to decide, do they love the money or do they love the business? Now, there's nothing wrong with liking the money. I mean, they all like money, but they've got to love the business. They've got to have a passion for it. Because if I give them a whole bunch of money and they love the money and they don't love the business, no matter what they tell me, 6 months from now they'll be gone. You know, I mean, they'll just all of a sudden say, "Why am I getting up at 7 in the morning just so I can send a lot of money to Omaha?" You know, I mean, it won't work. So they have to love the business. I mean, I want people with a passion for the business. I used to say that I had a one-line employment form, one-question employment form. The question was, "Are you a fanatic?" You know, if you answered yes, you got the job. Because I want somebody who's fanatic about their business.
You have over $100 billion of cash.
Berkshire does that.
Berkshire. No, maybe you do. Berkshire has over $100 billion in cash, and you say that you always want this company to be a fortress. So how much cash should an ordinary investor have on a percentage basis, do you think?
It depends on their personal situation. If you're working in something where you're living off your paycheck from week to week, you want to have a little cash around, and you certainly don't want to have a credit card that's maxed out or anything like that.
The worst investment I ever made? How long do you have? I've made some very bad ones, but that doesn't really bother me. It may bother the shareholders, but that's another question. You're going to make mistakes in life. I mean, there's no question about it. You don't want to make them on the big decisions, who you marry and some things like that. So there's no way I'm going to make a lot of business and investment decisions without making some mistakes. I may try to minimize them. I don't dwell on them at all. I don't look back. The biggest mistakes are the ones that actually don't show up. They're the mistakes of omission rather than commission. We've never lost that much money on any one investment. But it's the things that I knew enough to do that I didn't do. We have missed profits of as much as, maybe $10 billion in things that I knew enough to do and I didn't do. Now, the fact I didn't buy Microsoft way back is not a foregone opportunity because I didn't know enough to make that decision. But there have been other investments where I did know enough to make the decision, and for one reason or another, I either didn't do it at all or I did it on a small scale. I was sucking my thumb when I should have been writing checks, basically. And those don't show up. There's no place where it shows missed opportunities, but I've missed some big ones. The triumphs in life are partly triumphs because you know that everything isn't going to be a triumph. And I would never get too hung up on mistakes. I know a lot of people that really agonize over them, and it just isn't worth it. I mean, tomorrow's another day, and you live it forward and just go on to the next thing. I would encourage you, if you're interested in the field, to do a few things. I'd still try and make it as intelligent as possible. I would try to stick with businesses I thought I understood. I'd still get out that sheet of paper, and I'd write, "I'm doing this because," and just test my reasoning. And then I'd go back and read it a year later and see whether what you thought would be true turned out to be true. So I would always check myself. I believe in grading myself on everything. Doctors have postmortems, and they do it because they learn from postmortems. In business, people don't like to do postmortems. When I can be on the board of a company, and they can be owners building plants or buying companies, and they never want it 2 years later to run a check on how that decision turned out because it can be unpleasant. But you learn from postmortems. And you don't want to learn. It's way better to learn from other people's mistakes than your own, but you got to learn from a few of your own too. And the time to do it is when you're young.
If you want another amazing Warren Buffett video, check it out right there next to me. I think you'll love it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.
I was lucky in that I sort of found early on what turned me on that way. But don't settle for something if you can possibly. Don't worry about making the most money this week or next month. I mean, when I went to